Item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the March 9, 2020 regular meeting. If you've had time to review those, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Minutes have passed. The first item on the agenda is the discussion and consideration of a recommendation of the Calvert City Planning Commission for a map amendment for a property located on the north side of West Second Street, approximately 0.4 miles plus or minus Kentucky Highway 95, south of the P&L Railroad, between Gary Johnson Road and Arkansas Street in Calvert City, from a residential 4R4 to Conservation C.
And this is for the city's portion of that deal.
Right,
That is correct.
right. Do all you guys have the summary findings and recommendation in front of you?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, they're identical. I mean, except for two different pieces of property. The evidence is a little different. The findings of fact are a little different, but the bottom line is that the property around the C property, the surrounding, that green property is the stormwater basin that the city's trying to get. The city's already bought it. We already own it. And then that little pink spot in the middle is the B2 area where Duckett, I forgot what their names are, what their real name is now. But
United Electrical.
yeah, there you go. That they're wanting to put that electrical business there if they can get a conditional use permit. And I've got a couple of ordinances that we can do a first reading of for those two zoning things if you're so inclined, for those two map amendments.
Okay, any more discussion on the issue of the map amendments? Why we're changing this from an R4 to conservation? The property.
To understand the majority vote of a quorum, was it unanimous? I mean, it's just a personal curiosity. It doesn't make a difference.
Yes, it
Yes.
was.
Okay.
So there being more discussion, we'll consider that the first reading of an ordinance amending the zoning map of Calvert City to amend the zoning district applicable for the 7.7283 acre property owned by the city of Calvert to be rezoned from an R4 to a C conservation zone.
Want me to read it?
Yes, Greg, go ahead.
Okay. Whereas the Calvert City Planning Commission has considered an amendment of the official zoning map proposed by the city council to affect 7.7283 acre property owned by the city of Calvert City and located on the north side of West Second Street, approximately 0.4 miles plus or minus west of Kentucky Highway 95, south of the P&L Railroad line and between Gary Johnson Road and Arkansas Street in Calvert City, Kentucky. Such area being more particularly identified on the proposed zoning map and tract description attached here to. And whereas the due process was afforded all interested parties in accordance with the provisions of KRS Chapter 100, and whereas the Planning Commission has made a written summary of the evidence, findings of fact, and recommendations to the City Council recommending the proposed zoning map amendment, and whereas the City Council has determined that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate, and whereas the City Council has noted that in order to maintain clarity and facilitate simplicity and interpretation of the official zoning map of the city, proposed amendment should be reflected in a revised official zoning map in accordance with the provisions of Article 10.2 of the Calvert City zoning ordinance. Now therefore be it ordained by the city of Calvert City, Commonwealth of Kentucky, that the official zoning map presented to the City Council and bearing an adopted date of, and that's yet to be determined, be and hereby is adopted as the official zoning map of the city. That's the first reading of the 7-acre tract.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Introduction to introduce. There's the motion. Have a second.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Glenda, roll call.
Councilman Colburn,
Yes.
Councilman Hale. She's not on yet. Councilman Harrington,
Yes.
Councilman Rao,
Yes.
Councilman Babcock.
I didn't hear any of it.
It was a first reading of the 7-acre tract of the city's property out on 2nd Avenue. changing the zoning of that green area from R4 to conservation so that we can use that area as a stormwater basin.
Okay, yes.
Councilman Stokes.
Yes.
They're all in the affirmative.
And the next item on the agenda is the consideration of the property in the same general area of 2.7524 acres owned by United Electric Contractors to be rezoned from an R4 to a B2 general business. Any discussion on that issue?
Does everybody have a copy of the summary in front of them?
If you'll read that, Greg, this would be the first reading of the amendment of the zoning ordinance to change the zoning from R4 to a B2.
Right. And if you'll notice, just in the findings of fact. Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Okay. In the findings, basically the finding is that the existing zoning classification given to the property R4, given the stated intentions of the city for the surrounding property, is not developable as residential property, but may have value for some commercial uses and therefore is currently inappropriate. And a B2 would be appropriate. That's the recommendation of the council. I mean, of the commission. And here's the ordinance. Whereas the Calvert City Planning Commission has considered an amendment of the official zoning map proposed by the Calvert City Council to affect a 2.7524 acre property owned by United Electrical Contractors LLC and located on the north side of West 2nd Street, approximately 190 feet east of Gary Johnson Road, south of the P&L Railroad line and between Gary Johnson Road and Arkansas Street in Calvert City, Kentucky. Such area being more particularly identified on the proposed zoning map and tract description attached hereto. And whereas due process was afforded all interested parties in accordance with the provisions of KRS Chapter 100. And whereas the Planning Commission has made a written summary of the evidence, findings of fact, and recommendation to the City Council recommending the proposed zoning map amendment. And whereas the City Council has determined that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. And whereas the City Council has noted that in order to maintain clarity and facilitate simplicity in interpretation of the official zoning map of the city, the proposed amendment should be reflected in a revised official zoning map in accordance with the provisions of Article 10.2 of the Calvert City zoning ordinance. Now therefore be it ordained by the City of Calvert City, Commonwealth of Kentucky, that the official zoning map presented to the City Council and bearing an adopted date of something, 2020, be and hereby is adopted as the official zoning map of the city. There it is.
Okay, this is the first reading of an ordinance amending the zoning map to reflect the change of the property owned by United Electrical Contractors of 2.7524 acres from an R4 to a B2 zone. Do I have a motion to introduce?
I'll make a motion to introduce.
Motion introduced. Do I have a second?
Second.
Linda, call roll.
Councilman Colburn,
Yes.
Councilman Hale, Councilman Harrington,
Yes.
Councilman Rao,
Yes.
Councilman Babcock,
Yes.
Councilman Stokes.
Yes.
They are all in the affirmative.
Thank you. Hey, Greg, I'll let you speak to this issue of the change for the consideration of the approval of the municipal order number 2020-01, providing leave for the families under the first coronavirus response.
Does everybody have that in front of them?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I could go through it a little at a time if you wanted, but it's not like we have a big choice. The feds have said we're going to adopt it by April the 2nd. So we're sort of under a mandate to adopt this by April the 2nd. And
April
it is
1. April 1.
come again
It's April 1
today.
to tomorrow.
Oh,
The Secretary of the Treasurer had responsibility as part of the act to designate the date, and he designated the first day of the quarter to help simplify payment. So it's effective April 1.
Thank you. Thank you. When I got this, they were saying April the 2nd.
Yeah, they were stuck on April 2nd. I was disappointed it wasn't like the day they passed the thing, but it's April 1.
Okay. In any event, it's the thing that you all have been hearing on the news. It's 80 hours of pay. If you have to be off work for sick leave, you're going to get 80 hours. Basically, you're going to get 80 hours of full pay. And then you've got some FMLA. It's all bureaucratic stuff, and we don't have a choice. So, do you have any specific questions about it?
Well, my only question here, Greg, is that we're restating the conditions. Well, they're in summary. So, I mean, it is clear that the conditions of the act is what we're doing.
The preamble recites that.
Okay, gotcha.
And Greg, probably it's good to know, this morning I received a call from Doug Goforth of the Kentucky League of Cities. The league has now placed the virus epidemic response under the workman's comp rules. So workman's comp will be applicable to a person who might contact the virus. Okay, do we have any discussion on the municipal order? If not, do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we adopt the municipal order.
Motion
A
to
second.
adopt and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Come on, guys.
Ah,
I can hear you now. Thanks. Last item on the agenda. Consider the approval of a municipal order number 2020-02, recognizing the separation of powers dictated by the Constitution of Kentucky and further recognized by the emergency authority and mayor to suspend enforcement of specific ordinances pursuant to KRS 30B 070 and KRS 19A 100 subsection 2. Greg, you want to address that?
Yeah, this came out of a discussion that I was having with Chris Johnson, the attorney at KLC, and all of the mayors are faced with, well, basically all of the mayors have declared it a state of emergency, and that grants to them some authority, like in purchasing. We don't have to do all the bidding, and it just gives emergency authority. Then the issue came up with, what about turning off water? You know, ceasing water service when somebody doesn't pay their bill. Well, the Public Service Commission has instructed that nobody gets their water turned off because of failure of payment right now, because you need to wash your hands. And a lot of people are probably not going to be able to pay their bills because of the being at home and losing jobs and so forth. Well, the mayors are all issuing executive orders suspending the payment of those, not suspending the payment, suspending the disconnection of water service, for instance, so that we don't wind up with a bunch of people without water service that are going out and having face-to-faces with each other and failure to do the separation, to comply with the separation because they don't have any water, and unable to comply with the cleanliness aspects. So Chris and I were talking about this, and although the statutes are pretty clear, if you'll notice in that municipal order, it says 39B 070 and 39A 100.2. Those are both emergency statutes that give the mayors the authority to declare emergency and to do certain things within the context of that emergency, and specifically to protect public health and safety. But when Chris and I were talking about it, we both agreed it would be a good idea if, because of the separation of powers, it would be a good idea if the municipalities, the legislative authorities, which is you guys, would simply recite for purposes of internal control that when the mayor suspends enforcement of some ordinance for purposes of emergency, that you guys recognize that he does have the authority to suspend enforcement for that emergency and instruct your employees take the mayor's, when the mayor suspends enforcement, do what the mayor says. So that's what this is. This is just simply you guys acknowledging that the mayor has emergency powers, and when he exercises those to suspend enforcement of an ordinance, that you guys are behind him.
So, you need a motion?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we adopt municipal order 2020-02.
I'll second
Second.
that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion passes. All the items on the agenda. So therefore, we have concluded our meeting. Please be careful. Watch where you go. Keep your social distance. Be careful. Chris, Kevin, the gentleman
Yes.
affected in your plant, is he in your work areas?
No.
No? Maybe?
Maybe a little.
Maybe. Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's keep praying for those
That-
guys. 'Cause this could get bad
Yeah,
really
that's-
quick.
Yeah.
Really bad.
And, you know, we got Ashland. Ashland's probably got more personnel working in the Jackson purchase than most other places right now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for participating. I appreciate your patience. Thank you, Blair, for putting it together. And thank you, Glenda, for muting yourself. Good night, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
And thank you for not having a U of L
There you
flag
go.
behind you.
Yeah.
That's Louisville flag, yes.
Well, yeah.
All
All right.
guys.
See you guys.